What is up, NHL fans? It is Tuesday. This is your morning cup of hockey alongside Colby, Cohen. I'm Jonny, Lazarus. We're going to talk about the Beanpot final last night. We're going to talk to Frank Seravalli, the NHL Insider, about his trade target list and which teams might be making some moves here in the next coming weeks. We're also going to talk about some of last night's quotes from Jack Hughes and the New Jersey Devils out of their locker room, and we'll hit on everything else regarding the NHL and what is trending right now. But before we get into that, Colby, it's snowing a lot today. How's the snow by you? Because it's coming down very, very hard here in New York City.
Yeah, definitely. When I went outside this morning with the dogs, it was caught off guard, to say the least. So hopefully it stops soon. I got to be honest with you, 2 snowstorms in 1 year in this area doesn't seem quite right. So it's good to hear you got a little bit of energy this morning. I guess you must have got a good night's sleep last night. All you've been doing lately is complaining about your lack of sleep. But I got to tell you, not thrilled with that Beanpot fish. I know you were you had the Rangers last night, right? You were at MSG, so you probably didn't see it. Disappointing night for my Terriers. Macklin Celebrini had a good game. Probably not his best game. He didn't dominate the entire game. I mean, maybe that's unfair. Maybe he did dominate most of the game, but he just, wasn't able to get one there late in the game or in the third period. But got to credit Northeastern. They've won 5 of the last 6 Beanpots. They seem to be trending in the right direction right now. They got some big plays by some of their players. Same kid got the overtime.
Fontaine, best name in all hockey.
Same kid got the game winner last week for them and the previous year in overtime. So this kid's becoming a little bit of an overtime hero for Northeastern in the Beanpot. Gunnar Wolf Fontaine is the kid's name. I mean, great event, good game. You can only ask for a tight game like that. The Beanpot final generally is a really good game. I mean, even if the teams have big ranking discrepancies, it's a big event. The energy is great. You kind of find out who can deal with the pressure and who can't. So, all in all, another successful year of the Beanpot, even though BU lost. It definitely stings a little bit when they were winning all game. And when they gave up that goal in overtime, I was just like, you got to be fucking shitting me.
I saw it's now 5 of the last 6 years that Northeastern's won. That's a bit of a dynasty now.
And they hadn't, and it's funny because, I mean, they even through when I was in school, which I left in 2010, they had barely ever won one, and ever since they've been on their little run, they seem to be winning more of those than everybody else. So, it is a great tournament though. Like it's something that I didn't know anything about, being from Philadelphia. And I think a lot of people don't know much about the Beanpot, but it's the same 4 schools every year: BU, BC, Northeastern, and Harvard. First 2 Mondays in February. They play at the TD Garden. The second game is always sold out and packed, especially when it's BU BC. The student sections are unbelievable. The bands are there. It's cool because you get that college environment, that college sports environment in a big building. And it's really cool because, NHL games don't have bands and horn sections. And so it's a lot of fun. It really is. You get to see a lot of future NHL players, and look, it was another opportunity to watch Celebrini just show everyone why he is the most special player outside of probably the entire NHL. I mean, he's the best player in the world that's not in the NHL. He really is, and he's not even drafted yet. I mean, I'd be hard pressed to find a better prospect out there right now than Macklin Celebrini.
Is there a team that you want to see him go to specifically in the NHL come draft time? Or
look, I would love to see him go to Chicago, because I think having him and Bedard would be absolutely unbelievable. I think that would create a potential, another run of show of a dynasty there in Chicago. And I really want Kyle Davidson to be successful. I think getting Celebrini would all but cement Stanley Cups for him one day. But I would say my second choice, I would love to see him potentially in San Jose, even though it's such a small market out on the West Coast. But I want to see Mike Greer get a little bit of love. I mean, he took over the San Jose Sharks, and it's been a tough stretch. I mean, he got handed an absolute dumpster fire, and him and David Quinn are two close personal friends, both BU guys. Quinny I played for a huge chunk of my career, and Greersy I used to be in a workout group in the summer at Mike Boyle's, him, Pandolfo, Hal Gill. We had a great group of young guys and older pros like those guys, and just getting to be around those guys was amazing. So I root for guys like that, but ultimately I want Celebrini in a big market, like a Chicago or a big ass hockey market would be unbelievable.
I think it'd be cool if he went to Chicago also, but I feel like it's still somewhat just unfair. Like the Blackhawks, they get the 3 cups in what, a 5-year, 6-year
yeah,
span.
But they drafted well. It's not unfair. Listen, they got 1 first overall pick. That was Kane. A little bit of luck. They drafted Taves 3rd overall. Keith and Seabrook were not top 5 overall picks. Those guys were found a little bit later. I think Seabrook was a 2nd. I forget where Keith went, but they went out, they drafted Halmerson, and they did an unbelievable job of drafting the right core and developing the right core. And they were terrible all through the early 2000s. They could barely get anybody in the Chicago state in the building. And then, they drafted and developed. And I appreciate that type of, way to win. And they hit, man. I mean, how many teams miss on the 1st overall pick, let alone getting Jonathan Taves with the 3rd overall pick? I don't have to tell you.
Yeah, you're talking to someone who knows that firsthand experience. So
with the Rangers, I mean, they go 1-2 and or 2-1, and that could have reshaped them for the next 15 years, and it didn't. No disrespect to those players, but they're not franchise cornerstones. So just think about Bedard, Celebrini as your 2 centers. I mean, Are you fucking kidding me? That would be so great for the NHL. It really would. Chicago's a massively important market. A massively important market. So I really believe in what the hockey ops are doing in Chicago, with Kyle Davidson, Ben Eaton, Mark Eaton is the assistant general manager in charge of player development. What an awesome guy he is. What a smart individual he is. So, I think that would be really cool. So we'll see what happens. I mean, I think he's going 1st overall. So the tank is on.
It just depends who gets lucky enough in the lottery to get him. But I do think that we have Frank Seravalli in the studio ready to join us. So let's welcome in our friend, NHL Insider Frank Seravalli. Frank, how's the snow by you this morning? You do some shoveling this morning?
No shoveling, but I'm wearing a white sweatshirt. It's the first time I've worn a white hoodie, and
we can
look
see
like
through you.
I look like a blizzard on your screen, so maybe this is a one and done.
Well, I think this is actually perfect timing for Frank to come onto the show, because Jonny was just talking about how it's unfair that Chicago continues to get these number 1 overall picks, and the next
unfair.
The next sentence that was coming out of my mouth, Frank, was that you were literally in the room for the process of them picking, doing the lottery. And maybe you'll be back there again next year. I have no idea. Obviously, it's a ways away. But you were there to make sure it was fair.
Well, just
I'm
to
not
observe
saying the process is unfair. Yeah, I just meant as a fan that the Blackhawks,
I'll tell you what. Here's the thing that, everyone kind of has their criticism about the NHL draft lottery and the process. The one thing I really like about Chicago winning the lottery last year is they came by it honestly. They didn't tank. Think back to the last few weeks of the season and some of the massive wins that they had that put down other teams.
Yeah.
They beat the Flames in Calgary. They beat the Penguins in Pittsburgh.
Philly in
ending
overtime.
The Penguins season.
They go to overtime with the Flyers late last game of the year, second to last game of the year. Yeah, I mean,
there's nothing about it that was like, hey, obviously their roster and what they had on the ice, there were limitations to it, but no one had ever walked in there and said, hey, don't play hard today.
Yeah.
And the fact that you end up winning the lottery by chance again, to me, that's just, I don't know if karma exists. I don't know if that's a such thing, if that has anything to do with it. but at least I can appreciate the process of how they arrived there.
Well,
there's
and you
a
look at
whole
the way
conspiracy video on YouTube about the Buddy Robinson goal against Pittsburgh that like changed the hockey world forever, because Florida then goes on their playoff run. The Penguins miss the playoffs. The Blackhawks get Bedard. It's like this whole thing about that game.
Whatever
goal
deep state
shook up the hockey
secrets
world.
you think exist and conspiracy, like I'm just here to tell you I was in the room and I understand what you're saying about the goal and all the permutations that unravel from that. I watched the draft lottery process unfold. There was no monkey business.
Well, and you look at the way they've done it this year. They put a roster together that should have been way better than this, with guys like Taylor Hall and Corey Perry and Athanasiou, and like they should not be where they're at. They should be bad, but they shouldn't be as bad as they are with an American League roster. So again, like they didn't build the team to finish in last this year, like potentially they did the year before. So we'll see if karma gets on their side again, because Jonny and I were talking about that Celebrini Bedard, that could be freaking serious.
Yeah, and by the way, since you said unfair, that would also, if they were to win this year, they'd be the first team to win twice in a 5-year period of time since that new rule was instituted. So they would not be able to win again until 2030, I think.
Wait, what is the rule?
Yeah,
I didn't know. I
didn't know that.
The new rule that was put into place a couple years ago, that if you win twice in you can only win as many as 2 times in any 5-year span. So the fact that they won in 2023, if they win again in 2024, then they can't win again, I think, until 2030 or something, whatever the math is.
So what would happen, Frank, if they were to like 3 years in a row get that ping pong ball? Do they just move to second, or they don't even get to be in the lottery?
No, I think they.
Yeah, because they still should be up for like the
winning second is technically winning a lottery spot the way it works now. So I think that they'd go to 4th.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow, that's really interesting. I had
That's
no
a good
idea
rule.
about that. Yeah,
it's a good rule.
Yeah.
But that helps kind of eliminate some of the belly aching that you're talking about, I think. And I didn't hear the whole premise of the conversation, but if you can only win twice in 5 years, your incentive to get a lot better after that is pretty significant, because you don't want to be in that spot where you're 32nd place and you can only pick 4th.
Well,
Which,
Jonny,
by the way, still remains the most likely scenario. The Blackhawks are still likely to finish 32nd, but 75% of their odds, or 60% of their odds, is to draft 4th.
Right. Well, Johnny's going to bellyache no matter what, but he wasn't bellyaching when the Rangers had the 2nd overall pick and then the 1st overall pick. He was celebrating like a high school cheerleader. So we'll see what happens. His Rangers will be back there within the next couple of years.
Probably like probably 3 or 4 years, not the next 3 years, but 3 or 4 years. But speaking of teams that have incentive to get better, Frank,
well, they're not, because they're not going to have any draft picks. So
that's true.
Well, no, they're going to save all the draft picks for the Sphere this year.
No, that's actually not true, by the way.
I know. Yeah, I know. I saw that. But do you want to touch on that? I don't know if you want to.
I mean,
watch that.
Not particularly, just that.
Yeah.
I don't think anything of the 2024 draft being held at an MSG venue is going to get in the way of Chris Drury improving this team at the deadline if he wants to.
I didn't think that was real, because the Rangers also really don't leak that kind of information. So that seemed like one big lie when it first came out anyway. And, Ranger fans are pretty gullible. What?
It's just kind of similar to when they said Dolan was the one who made Chris Drury get Patrick Kane. And then I heard Drury was pissed about that kind of stuff because it wasn't true. I mean, from what I understood,
it makes him look weak too.
Yeah. But it does sound like shit that Dolan does. I mean, he does get a reputation for meddling with the Knicks, especially hardcore. Yeah. So why wouldn't he do it with the Rangers?
From what
I don't know anything about him or how he conducts business. Just that apparently the stories I hear is he wants to win and he doesn't mind being aggressive. So whatever that means to get there, that's the path that they'll take.
Well, speaking of being aggressive, what I was trying to get into before the whole Sphere thing came up, I forgot how it even came up, but I spent time yesterday with the Calgary Flames. I spoke to Andrei Kuzmenko, Igor Sharangovich, and Ryan Huska, and we talked about, obviously all the outside noise regarding the team right now, amidst their 4-game winning streak at the time. They lost last night, but this is a team that's been winning hockey games since the All-Star break. They're now just 3 points back in the second wildcard spot. Does that hinder them from being aggressive at the deadline, or is the plan still intact to be sellers?
Look, the plan is the plan is the plan. You don't, for one 10-day stretch that your team plays well, you don't alter what is a franchise engineered building process, right? Like you don't suddenly, alter course and submit new drawings to the engineering department. That doesn't work. So what the Flames are looking at, the real big question that remains is just a definitive answer one way or the other on Noah Hanifin and what happens next. Are you re-signing him? And if not, are you trading him? He's been atop the trade targets board for a week now. The fact that this has lingered on as long as it has, I think at least gives me a pretty good indication of, where this is trending. But short of that, I mean, they've already done a lot of the heavy lifting. I mean, think back to last summer, Tyler Toffoli, Nikita Zadorov earlier this season, then during the All-Star break, Elias Lindholm. You've got two key pieces left that are pending UFAs, Hanifin and then Tanev. And that's a pretty enviable spot to be in if you're the Calgary Flames, because even if you're keeping Noah Hanifin, then you still have the premier rental defenseman on the market and available in Tanev that a lot of teams are excited for and think he might be one of those missing piece type players to add to their team in a contending role. So they're in a good spot. They've done well with the trades that they've made to this point, and they're building methodically to try and have a 10-year period of time where they can be a competitive team. It's going to take them 2 to 3 years to get there. This is retool, not rebuild. And I think one of the exciting things that you're starting to see is, well, hey, Kuzmenko, he's developing some chemistry with Jonathan Huberdeau, and entering last night's game, Huberdeau kind of quietly 16 points in his last 16 games. So those types of things, you try and make some small improvements, try and find some pieces that fit, others may not, and continue to reshape your team. But as far as being swayed by a last ditch run to be the 8th seed, I mean, we only have to go back to Darryl Sutter a couple years back to his famous quote, "A waste of 8 days." I mean, that's what the Flames would be looking at if they were to keep their pieces just to try and get into the last wild card spot.
And Frank, I know that he's not on your trade target list, but have you heard any noise around Jacob Markstrom? Because, this seems like a guy, if they're not going to be contenders in the playoffs, a guy that could be on the move for a team like the Devils that do need a goalie pretty much ASAP.
Yeah, I think the Devils and Flames were pretty far down the track on a Markstrom deal. And I think it did get to his level to approve it. I think there were no issues there. And I think somehow, somewhere along the way, that trade was scuttled. Don't know how, don't know why, but they were pretty close to nailing it down. And you would have seen Jacob Markstrom become a New Jersey Devil, I think, at some point last week. So,
oh, wow.
Again, I don't know what happened, but there was a lot going on. And I guess the next thing for me when it comes to answering the Markstrom question is, one, can this be revisited? My answer is probably not, based on the way it played out. And two, now what? Is there another team that would be willing to step up and pay what would probably be a pretty significant price in order for Calgary to reshape their goaltending scenario? They have to do it anyway because
they have Wolf, right?
Yeah. Dustin Wolf.
And Markstrom's 34. He's 34 years old. He's old.
Well, but he's played so well, and goalies can play, as Marc-Andre Fleury can attest to, to 40. There's no reason why the age part of it is an issue. Really, for New Jersey, the key part in getting Markstrom is not just that he's played really well, but that he has term. Mm-hmm. What New Jersey really needs more than anything is stability. They need to nail down their goalie situation and just set it and forget it, not talk about it for the next couple years. And that's what Markstrom would have provided. And that's why he's such an attractive option. But for another team, how many other teams are really in the market for that kind of term?
Right. Yeah.
Off the top of my head, none that I could think of.
Well, so then I guess that means, Frank, that Fleury wouldn't be in the rental market for a guy like Fleury, New Jersey, right? Because
they could be.
You do,
but I think there's other teams that would be ahead of them on the rental market. I mean, look, the best time to address your goalie situation, bar none, is in the summer. Every summer, there's like 35 guys available, and I'm not exaggerating, as the game of goalie musical chairs spins. Short of that, I look at a couple other teams, Colorado and Carolina, that really make a lot of sense for Marc-Andre Fleury. Carolina, they've just had injury after injury. Ronta goes down. Anderson's still working his way back. Kochetkov was playing really well. Then he had the concussion. Colorado, they've made it clear that Georgiev has played too much. So the big thing for Fleury is if he's willing to waive his no trade, which he has complete control over, he's only going to do it to a place that he wants to play. He's not as well liked as he is. He's not a cheerleader. He doesn't want to just come to a contending team, smile on the bench, and open the door. That's not his plan. He wants to contribute and impact a team. Colorado should have lots of ice time available in the second half of the season as they get Georgiev into prime shape for the playoffs. And Carolina, I mean, he could be the guy that comes in, takes the crease, and runs with it, until the end of the year. So I think there's more attractive options out there for him really than New Jersey. And like I said, New Jersey needs stability.
Yeah, and you think about Carolina, that's usually a pretty hospitable place for a goaltender. I mean, you just look at the way they operate, the way they defend, the way that they, back pressure the puck. They're not a team that generally plays high risk, high reward hockey. So I feel like that's a place where Fleury could go and probably have success right away, because you just see like goaltenders that we probably didn't know anything about or are young succeed there in Carolina just based on the system.
So if you were Fleury, that's where you would, like, let's say you had your chance to pick, that's where you'd go?
I would say, yeah, I think that would be the place where he could go with the most opportunity and a place that he would have the most chance at winning. I mean, we look at that team and like they're always right there knocking on the door. They're still missing that superstar. They need to be aggressive. Like their window's not going to stay open forever. So if they can go out and get Fleury and probably overpay for him, because that's what happens.
It's not going to be expensive. A couple years ago, before joining Mini, he went for a second round pick.
Right.
It's probably a third now.
Okay, so let's just say it's a second or a third. If it's a competitive market, maybe they got to give a second. I don't think I don't think that's a waste. I think that's a smart decision because again, Carolina's core group of who makes them successful, they're not getting any younger. I'm not saying they're old. They're not getting younger.
Okay,
obviously.
Just look at me. Who is getting younger? Stop saying that. They're not getting any younger. No one on this planet is, last time I checked.
Some teams get younger. Some teams reload with young players. Some teams you see all these young players ready to come in and take the next step. And you just look at Carolina. They've had that group of players together for a while. That window's not going to stay open forever. Johnny
thinks it's changing this year. Shea and Pesci are both up on the back end.
And Pesci's never going to stay.
Up. And
Pesci's never staying in Carolina. After his last contract negotiation that got a little bit ugly, he's not staying in Carolina.
Well, I don't think
they've even made him an offer, to be fair.
Yeah, I mean, there was some back and forth this past summer. I know that to be a fact, but it wasn't pretty.
And so now, but I disagree with you because I don't think that's in their nature. Like their whole thing is we're going to be competitive for 10 consecutive years. And they're probably 5 years into that or 6. Going back to the 2018 conference final. I don't see them giving up massive assets for someone on this market. I don't. I think their deadline playbook is more or less what it is. They were really in on Timo Meier deep last year. San Jose picked what they felt was the better offer, which I think in 5 years, it might be interesting to go back and look and see what that looked like with the centerpiece of the prospects coming back being Shakir Mukhamadullin. And then we'll see. But after that, like, look at what they did last year. They just checked down to a bunch of players that, they thought maybe could kind of help them. Shane Gostisbehere, they took a chance on Jesse Puljujärvi. And that was it. They're like, all right, we'll call it a
But
day.
Frank, you look who's on your trade board right now. There isn't, I mean, Henrique, Lawton.
That's my point.
Dowd, there isn't star players. Like
and that's another, but that's why I feel so confident in saying it. It's not really in their nature, and no one's really available this year that knocks your socks off. At least I as I see it.
But you look at the way that they're playing, you look at who they are, you look at their structure. If they get a goaltender who's making saves, Johnny thinks they're the best team in the
I
Metro.
agree with you. All what I'm saying is I think they're going to go after a goalie, but outside of that,
well, if it's not Fleury, because you're saying a goalie,
cost.
Who else do you think if Fleury's not the guy, what other goaltender do you think?
Wait, we actually have a good question in the chat from Jeremiah Maxwell. He said, would the Caps trade Darcy Kemper to a contending team and keep Lindgren?
Maybe. I think there's more interest in Lindgren though than there is in Kemper.
Well, because his contract's up sooner, but he seems to be the guy.
A lesser cap hit.
Yeah, he seems to be the guy there right now too, though.
How much does the owner in Carolina get involved in everything, Frank? Because I feel like that's always something we hear, that their owner gets involved in trades and kind of gets involved with the general manager, maybe more than most.
I think he's just involved in everything. I don't think it's like he's not someone that dabbles or comes in and dinks and dunks around the trade deadline and says, do this or do that. I think he's informed on every facet of their operation, which to the guys that work there, he's just part of the executive team. He's not like some guy that sits in a castle in Switzerland like some of these teams have that comes around twice a year and pounds their fist on the table. Like, he's intimately into every part of what the Canes do from a night-to-night basis, from understanding what the lineup decisions are to player movement, to prices on the market for players, to drafting, like scouting. This is not someone that has sat on the sidelines. He's actually dove in and done a lot of the work to understand the business and how it operates on a day-to-day basis, that he's in on everything. So he's not going anywhere. He's the boss. He's the man who cuts the checks.
Doesn't cut the checks, from what I hear.
Unlike some other teams, he cuts the checks and pays the bills. And I'm making a Coyotes joke. And, there's no, when it comes to spending on his team to win, there are no shortcuts. If the answer comes down to, are you going to help our team win and win a Stanley Cup? He's writing the check every time. It's that he's asked other questions about the other parts of the operation to say, is this making us money? Is this helping us win? And if the answer is no, then he's gone about a different path. And there's this complaint about him that I hear all the time. He's too involved and he's cheap. And he's really neither one of those things.
Well, I heard he didn't want to pay Johnny Forsland, which I think was a mistake.
That's not my business, and it's not your business. And
it's kind of my business.
Okay, but what I'm saying is, stick to what I was talking about the helping your team win. If he feels like the broadcaster isn't helping him win, and he wants to change jobs or change people or pay less, that's his prerogative.
Of course it is. I think it's a mistake, and I'm going to be judgmental because that's what we do in the media, and it is what it is. But you mentioned the Coyotes, and this is my last question that I kind of wanted to ask you about, Frank, and I talked about this the other day. I'm sick of their Twitter and their bullshit. I believe they have zero plan, and they're grasping, and they're throwing shit against the wall and hoping something's going to stick. Honestly, I'm someone who was all for them making it work in Tempe, making it work in that area. But honestly, at this point, I've defended Mullet Arena. I've literally defended them for 2 years now. I'm done defending them. I'm sick of it, and I'm annoyed by it now. Give us the latest on the Coyotes situation.
I think part of your analysis is accurate. I think they have a site that they like it's what I would call North Scottsdale. I would say it would be on the edge of Scottsdale, pretty far north of the population center there. And I think there's actually valid questions that no one's really asked about, since people were belly aching about Glendale. as to whether this is even the right site. But they have zeroed in on a parcel of 100 acres with the Arizona State Land Trust that they are allegedly pursuing. We don't have any official proof other than them saying it. It has not yet appeared on a public agenda, which is Arizona state law. Their next meeting with the State Land Trust is March 14th, so a week or a month and 1 day from today. And they've got a lot of work to do. I see a lot of Coyotes fans are attaching this idea of pursuing this piece of land as, oh, like it's going to happen. A million things need to happen between now and then. A proper appraisal, environmental studies, all these different things that would need to happen. Then the land actually gets posted for auction, and the Coyotes still need to come in and win the auction. They could also be challenged by government watchdogs because they've gone through 2 different municipalities in Arizona and have been told to leave, either by voters or by city council. So they're in a tough spot. They're trying to do this and avoid a public vote, which is what the referendum was in Tempe when they lost. And the only answer that the NHL wants is, when are you putting steel and shovels into the ground? Mm-hmm. Don't give us a maybe. Don't give us a could be. Give us a firm date. And I can only say it this way because this is the best way to say it. The clock is ticking. You don't get unlimited runway here to tell us when you're moving from a 4,600 seat arena. And I firmly believe that whether it was January 31st as their deadline, the NHLPA says the Coyotes have blown through 2 different artificial deadlines, whatever it is. I think they have until May at the very latest to determine what their next step is. And if not, that team's not playing in Arizona next year. If they don't have a firm date and firm plan, it's not happening. They have to pull up stakes and move out. I don't foresee them playing in Arizona for 1 more year if they don't have a firm plan.
Interesting. I mean, I think that could be the better situation for the league as well, right? Because
I just think, to Colby's point, Johnny, it's toxic.
Something's got to happen. Yeah, it's
2 decades of losing,
shut up or shut up,
of bankruptcies, of different arenas, of now being a laughing stock of the NHL in terms of their setup. Guys feeling like they're not playing in the NHL, they're not earning revenue in the way that they should. I think the best play, regardless, is to pull up stakes and move the team to Arizona, change the brand, change the team name. Or move them to Salt Lake City, excuse me. Change the brand, change the logo, change everything. If you look at their picks and prospects, they're actually going to have a really good team in 2 to 3 years, like really good. So have them start fresh somewhere else. It's probably better than starting as an expansion franchise because you actually have pieces you like, and then come back in 5 years to Arizona with a proper owner, a proper arena. I don't have any doubt that the Phoenix market can work for the NHL. I just don't think, I know with this owner, it doesn't. And 2, I know that at this site right now, it doesn't. So until one or both of those things change, I don't think there's going to be much change from a Coyotes perspective.
Well, Frank, I only have one more question for you because I know we got to let you go here shortly, but this is the topic of conversation around the league for the last 4 days, it feels like. What do you think Morgan Rielly gets as far as his number for games suspended? And what do you think is the fair number?
My answer to both questions is 5 games. I think it's the same but different as David Perron, which got 6. They have very similar suspension and discipline history, which is nothing to speak of. And Perron got the wrong guy. Both were out of anger. Both were non-hockey plays, so to speak, meaning after the whistle. And I just think 5 fits based on precedent and history.
I agree. I mean, I said it should be at least minimum 5 yesterday on the show, I think, right, Colby? Because we compared it to David Perron as well. But Colby, do you have a rebuttal on that? Because I know before we started the show.
No, I think he's going to get 5 games, 5 or 6, honestly, is what I think they're going to give him. But I think the appropriate number is 3 because, again, I just think nobody got hurt. And everybody was laughing about it. Like I know I come at this from a different perspective than most people, but I just didn't think it was as bad as anybody thought. I didn't think either thing was anywhere near as bad as anybody thought. And I think injury gets factored into these
in a small way,
and they do. And I just don't. I mean, look, what I think he should get and what he's going to get are different. Like, I just think you look at some of these other instances, the Alex Chason one, the Matthews one. I don't know. Like, yeah, this happened after a whistle. So did the Alex Chason one. I think he's getting 5 or 6 games, no doubt. But if I was making the decision, I would give him 3 games. That would be my decision if it was my decision, which it's clearly not.
And you didn't ask me about this part of it, but I think it's okay to like the Ridley Gregg slap shot like I did.
Yeah.
And also think that it warranted a response, which it did. But I think using your stick was the error in judgment. Like, you should have just grabbed him and you would have gotten a 10-minute misconduct at the end of the game, and that would have been that. And you would have gotten your retribution. It was just a quick reaction where he got his hands up and he just should have grabbed him. That's I think he definitely deserved a response. I love the slap. Like, you can like all these things at the same time.
Yeah.
But
that's where we're at.
That's basically what we said yesterday. Yeah.
We loved it all. We loved the whole thing. We loved the villain. We loved the response. Nobody got hurt. You know, there's a lot to like about it. That rivalry.
I mean, it's not.
Ignited.
This isn't me being sanctimonious by saying 5 games. I just think you cross-check someone in the face, and that's what you're going to get. Like,
listen,
reality.
I'm not going to be like, oh my God, if that happens. So, all right, Frank, look, we appreciate your time every Tuesday. Frank's with us. You know, he comes on a couple minutes into the show. We love to pick his brain about what's going on. Know you got a lot to do today, Frank. You are a busy guy, and I know Megan's going to have you out there shoveling it.
That's so. I don't know if anyone will be able to see me out there in this shirt.
I know your kids.
Can we see some shoveling
you.
content? I want to see some videos you shoveling.
Your kids are not helping you. That I know for sure.
Well, it's heavy today, so today I'm going to be busting out the snowblower.
Oh, big time. Big time. Yeah. All right, Frank. Well, look, enjoy. Thank you for your time. Make sure you check out DFO Live today at noon. I'm sure Frank will be on 17 other shows today as well. We won't go through all of them, but him and Tyler, your M Truck, 12 o'clock Eastern every day, bringing you all the latest news and updates on the Daily Faceoff YouTube channel. All right, and check out Frank's trade targets board. That's starting to get hot. We're coming in hot to the trade deadline. So have a good day, Frank. Thanks, man.
See you guys.
Thanks, Frank. Colby, I feel like this trade deadline is just way less exciting than years past. I don't know if that's just my own opinion or if that's just
there's no Patrick Kane available. I mean, I think that's
last year was insane.
Jonathan Taves' name was out there. I mean, there was just a lot of bigger name players out there, but you know, those guys aren't usually the ones that come in and make the big impacts. They're really not. But here's the one thing I'm going to say. Tampa Bay has a shitload of cap space available right now because of the Sergachev injury. So let's keep an eye on what Breezewall is going to do there, because he's going to put that $8-9 million to use. I mean, he's already mortgaged their future. So at this point, you might as well just continue
go
to
all
mortgage.
in again.
I mean, why not at this point? So that's, to me, a sleeper team that I don't think enough people are talking about at the deadline. So we got a couple of people in the chat that have had some decent points about this whole cross check to the head. There's a little debate going on about Perron. Elias McCracken said, you know, why would it be 6 if it's the same as Perron? And the complaint is the consistency when it comes to this player safety stuff. And I think that's a valid complaint for fans. I think no 2 hits are alike, so it's never going to be perfect. But I do think there is a lack of consistency that's really showed up in a heavy way this year, especially in the last couple of weeks. So that's a good point by Elias McCracken. Great tag name or screen name, whatever you call it on YouTube. And then name. Obviously Jeremiah is just going to town on people in the chat right now, just flexing his knowledge. And I love how all in Jeremiah is now on the Battle of ComAv and college hockey. He was watching the BU Northeastern game I did a couple weeks ago on ESPN. So he's all in on college hockey. And it's a perfect segue into a topic right now that's really blowing up a little right now in the media, and it's the whole Canadian Hockey League player eligibility for the NCAA. And I know most people are familiar with this, but the conversation piece right now is that traditionally, if you go play major junior in Canada, which is the OHL, the QMJHL, and the WHL, it's a major feeder to the NHL, you're immediately ineligible for the NCAA because there's a small money component in junior hockey. Why? College players are now getting paid. Players are days away from becoming employees. The Dartmouth players in basketball just won a court case to unionize. So
really,
there's a report yesterday that the NCAA's coaching committee has no interest in allowing CHL players to play, and it's dead in the water. Here's why I think that's total bullshit. They're going to get sued. And if you're keeping score at home, the NCAA has not won a lawsuit in I don't know how long. They are on the wrong side of every lawsuit. And so I think they're going to sue the NCAA to make these Canadian kids who play major junior eligible. And I love it. I want to see the best Canadian major junior league players. Maybe they play 16 and 17 years old, and then they go to college at 18. The challenge is going to be the academic part, because you've got to be eligible with the NCAA. And I think that's going to force these major junior kids to go to high school. A lot of these major junior kids don't go to high school. They flame out of school in like middle school, and then most of them don't make it to the NHL. They don't take school even a little bit serious. And I'm not saying you've got to be a scholar, Jonny, but at least go show up and get grades and take the tests. And then maybe you can go play in college and get an education. Like, I hope this lawsuit happens, and I hope the NCAA's hand is forced where they have to start admitting these CHL players. Imagine if these kids who go to OHL and they become studs, instead of having to stay in major junior for their 18-year-old season and 19-year-old season, NHL teams will be drooling to be able to put them in the NCAA rather than have to force them into the NHL or let them play against 15 and 16-year-olds and score 170 points in juniors, which doesn't help anyone. So I love what's happening right now, and I hope it happens. I feel like you have a little bit of a different point of view on this because it might have bumped your spot off of a Division I team. But what could be bad about this for the NCAA?
Well, I wasn't really made aware of the situation until recently. I didn't know that this was, in depth of the conversation, but, the points you've made have really changed my mind a lot. And I think about it in the sense of the quality of hockey in the States versus the quality of hockey in Canada. And you hear all the conversations now in the last 5-6 years about NHL players coming out of the CHL versus NHL players coming out of college. And you look at the last, I want to say 5-6 years, for the most part, the best defensemen in the NHL the last 4 to 5 years have come out of college hockey. Like, the three that come to mind are Cale Makar, Quinn Hughes, Adam Fox. In my mind, those are 3 college hockey players. Then you look at Charlie McAvoy, who's another one. Obviously there are some overseas players that have come from, the Swedish leagues, the Russian leagues, the Europe leagues, whatever you want to call it. I just think college hockey has become so much better in the last decade. But I also, I don't want to come off so biased as an American. I think there is such a positive impact of the CHL, of players, going and playing major junior and getting that 70, 80 game experience. The only thing negative I have about college is that they're only playing 35 to 40 games a year if your team does well, and that's something that actually Lindy Ruff had talked about this year with the Devils, is that they have so many young defensemen this year who haven't played a full 82 game season. They came from college where, a guy like Luke Hughes.
But Jonny, let me just ask you this question.
I'm just thinking both sides here.
I get it, but because that's what you do. You like to stay on the middle of the fence.
I like to be a little bit level-headed.
Let me ask you a couple questions. When you're talking about young kids, okay, and you're talking about development, players develop until what age would you say? Just give me an age you think that they really can develop till.
22, 23.
So I would say I disagree with that. I think players continue to develop into their mid-20s. That's why you see defensemen having their best years at 26, 27, 28. Forwards, maybe 25. So I think guys literally continue to develop. Okay. It might not be a perfectly straight, you might have your dips and whatever, but they continue to develop. Why does an 18-year-old kid need to play 75 games or 80 games in the OHL or the CHL and be riding on buses and be eating dog shit food?
I'm not saying it's better. I would never have gotten major junior over college.
Let me finish. Okay. You play your game, you get on the bus, you eat Subway or you eat pizza, and then you bus all night, you sleep like shit. Tell me what is good for development for those kids. Yeah, they played a lot of games, but Jonny, when do you really get better? Are you getting better in games? Are you getting better in practice every day? Are you getting better skill development in practice, off-ice training? This is where you're developing. So I don't buy this whole they need to play more games at 18 years old. Listen, you're right. Players hit a wall. Young players hit a wall. Look at Patra. He came from the CHL. He hit a major fucking wall. Listen, playing 75 games against 16, 17-year-olds is not the same thing as playing 75, 80 games in the NHL. So why not build these kids' foundations through the NCAA in the weight room, good nutrition, not bussing all night, not sleeping in shitty hotels and God knows where, Western Quebec and Canada and Medicine Hat and nothing against these towns. Listen, they're great towns that are great for these small junior hockey places. But from a development standpoint, that's the name of the game. Develop at that age. How is that better than 35, 40 games, a shitload of time in the weight room, and a shitload of practice time?
I mean, that wasn't the original argument. I wasn't saying that the Canadian leagues develop players.
I'm arguing with Lindy Ruff, not you.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say like it felt like a personal
I'm yelling
attack.
At Lindy, not you right now.
Yeah. No, but I think, sometimes you hear players talk about that grind of the 82 game schedule where you can't deny the fact that the Canadian Hockey League is built more like the pro schedule. That's a fact.
Maybe the American League schedule, but not the NHL schedule. The Canadian Hockey League still plays weekends. They're still a weekend league for the most part. You're just playing 3-3s every weekend. Again, that's shit for development. I did it in my American League career, and it was fucking terrible. You're not getting better playing 3 games in 3 days. Sorry. Sunday, you're just trying to not get hurt. That's it. That's all you're trying to do is not get hurt. So I just think we're getting smarter with sports science. We're learning about sleep, recovery, flexibility, strength training, all of these things. And I just think that, listen, you want to let these kids play all these games up until they're 18 and then really develop them, 18 and 19-year-old, 20-year-old players like Quinn Hughes, like Luke Hughes, like these kids who have done it. Yeah, okay, there's always going to be an adjustment, but I'm telling you right now, I make the same argument for these kids who came out of the CHL. Like, look at Patra. He's a great example. He started amazing for the Bruins. He tailed off. He got injured. He was really, honestly, his spot in the lineup totally became in question before he decided to have that shoulder surgery. And so I just think that the better development model, the less rush. Like, here's another example. Kevin Korchinski, okay? He was like the 7th overall pick a couple years ago. It would have done him no good to be in juniors this year. But honestly, he shouldn't be in the NHL either. He should be playing NCAA hockey this year against 24-year-olds, learning how to defend, getting stronger, and developing. And then maybe he goes and plays in the NHL the following year, like we've seen Quinn Hughes, Luke Hughes, the list goes on and on. So again, I'm biased, but it just makes too much sense. If we're truly worried about development, it makes too much sense.
No, I agree with you on that end, but also let me ask you this question now. What does that do to the USHL if kids from, all the CHL can play college hockey? Because if you're a kid growing up in the States and you hear that you can get paid going to play in the OHL and can still go play in college.
Paid what though? $100 a week?
I don't know. Like just I'm asking here.
Well, here's what I would say to that. I think the USHL is a phenomenal league, especially now that the national team plays in that league. And here's the thing.
Does it take away from that?
Let me finish. I don't think you're going to start losing American kids to the OHL at 16. And here's the reason why. Because of education. You want to keep kids in American high schools, okay? It's a different situation. And maybe there's some sort of rule. I don't know. But I don't think that would affect the USHL. I really don't. I think it's a completely different type of player. I also think the USHL is starting to catch up. I really do. If you look at the players, remember this, the USHL feeds the NCAA. The OHL or the CHL, which is the overall in Canada, that feeds pro hockey. So there are different types of feeder systems there. But no, I don't think it does affect the USHL. And look, we were talking about this before. We're going to have the president of the USHL on here sometime in the next 2 weeks, Glenn Heffernan. You know, he's in charge of the entire league. It's a good question for him, Johnny. It's actually a good question. You know, for once you had a good question. So let's save that for Glenn when he comes on sometime here in the next couple of weeks.
Again, we are two former college hockey players. I'm not disagreeing with anything you're saying. I'm just trying to think on the other side of the argument. Like, it'd be nice to hear a Canadian's opinion right now on what they think of this, because, you know, I'm sure there are people that are more familiar with the OHL, the WHL than we are.
Look, I was pretty set on going that route. I was playing in the Ontario Provincial League as a 15-year-old. So I was playing basically in the OHL's farm league. That's kind of what it was. It was a lockout year, so the trickle-down effect was insane. You know, and this was before I went to the national development team, but I was dead set. I was ready to go to the OHL, but my parents weren't letting me. They said, you're going to college. You're playing college hockey. So I'm pretty familiar. I did visits in Kitchener, Plymouth. I talked to a lot of teams. So I have a little bit of experience with that, albeit it was a long time ago. But you're right. I think maybe what we try to do is we try to get a guy on who went that path. Most major junior players I played with and pro, they couldn't believe when I would take them to BU. You know, when I was in Providence and I'd take them up to BU and hit the bars at BU, they'd be like, holy shit, I should have played college hockey. I remember taking Tyler Seguin during, you know, a call up in Boston to Tease Pub on a Tease Tuesday, which was karaoke night. And the ratio of male to female was 90-10. It was unbelievable. Segs was like, I should have gone to college. You know, the amount of guys that pro guys that I took to college bars in Boston that were like, I should have gone to college. I mean, it was real. So we can table this discussion for when we get a major league guy, major junior guy on, and B, when we get Glenn Heffernan on our show in the next couple of weeks, the president of the USHL, let's table it and bring it back, because I think this is going to stay relevant. I think this topic, we haven't heard the last of it.
I can't believe, you know, I haven't heard of it until like yesterday, basically. I think it's a pretty big deal. So I'm definitely interested to learn more as well, because obviously I don't know everything about this topic right now, but I thought you made some really good points. And, you know,
I usually do, Johnny.
No, there's a guy on Twitter who said you never have good takes, but I'll always advocate for college hockey.
Well, if it's on Twitter, it must be true.
Dude, Twitter's real. But let's talk about some of the games tonight, because there are a lot of good ones. The St. Louis Blues are in Toronto. They've won 7 out of their last 8. They're really buzzing here as of late. And obviously everything going on with the Leafs right now, this Morgan Rielly suspension could be, you know, a topic of conversation tonight during the game and whatnot, but a pretty big game in Toronto. Then another game I have my eyes on is Boston and Tampa Bay. You know, Boston has not looked very good out of All-Star break. They've had 2 pretty bad stinkers, both on home ice as well. They've gotten booed twice now this past week by their home fans. So this is a big game for Boston.
Yeah, they moved Marchand up to the top line, usually Pasta and Marshy have been split at times, and now they're going to play 5-on-5 together. I saw yesterday the lines for practice. So Jim Montgomery called them out. So it'll be interesting to see how they respond. I'll be watching that game too. No love lost between those teams, by the way. No love lost at all.
There are 11 games tonight, and another game that I'll probably watch a little bit of is Colorado at Washington. The Avs have lost 4 straight games too. So this post All-Star break stuff is pretty wild. You know, you see the Flames win 4 in a row. You see the Rangers win 5 in a row.
Edmonton has not looked great. Listen, Edmonton hasn't looked great off the break. Ken Holland said the other day, hard to know what I need to address right now with the way that we're playing. It's amazing how the NHL is such a what have you done for me lately situation. I had Edmonton at the top of my power rankings 2 weeks ago. They're on a 16-game win streak. How could you not? Now, they've looked pedestrian. They really have. I think they'll get back going tonight, but Detroit's getting Kane back. So that team is going to continue to push. They're sniffing, they're hanging, they're wanting to make the playoffs this year. I think it's great for the league to have them back in the playoffs. So, I don't know how late I'll stay up tonight. Hopefully I'll be able to see that game. And let me just ask you one final question before we go.
Mm-hmm.
Are you ready to admit that the Philadelphia Flyers are a playoff team? Are you there yet? Because you're just never there. And they just continue to win. Listen, they last night, they're just fighting back all game. And then the third period, they go out and they put their foot on Phoenix's throat.
They beat the Coyotes.
Yeah, but listen, the Coyotes have been better this year. They're a team that's hanging around the playoff hunt. I mean, they've had a couple of good wins since break. They're on a 4-game win streak now. They had a tough finish. They were exhausted going into break. Now all of a sudden they've won 4 in a row. Yes, they're going to sell some pieces off. Scott Lawton's on the trade board. Walker's on the trade board. Sealer's a name that's out there. But man, how do you keep doubting them? We're into what's today's date? We're mid-February. We're not that far off.
There's still so much hockey. They have 28 games left. There's so much hockey.
But why are you, again, I was not a believer in them until not that long ago. I kept thinking the same thing, but Johnny, how long do they have to do it? How long do they have to keep winning games for you to believe?
Until April 15th.
You're gonna doubt them until the last game of the season.
I'm doubting them to the last game.
Listen, you're not alone. You're not alone. It took me a while to get on board, and I actually think it's gonna fuck them because they're gonna be drafting way too low for where they need to be drafting. But man, you can't deny what they're doing. You can't deny what Torts is getting out of certain players, the way he's elevated Travis Konechny, the way he's teaching accountability in the way that these guys play. Look at Morgan Frost. He looks like a legitimate offensive threat in the NHL now. So I know I threw a wrench at you there as we were trying to wrap up the show, but I saw them win again last night, and I couldn't wait to ask you that question because every time I text you about the Flyers, you always respond, Flyers suck. Literally, you give me 2 words.
I will pay for your cat. I will pay for a catch dinner if the Flyers make the playoffs.
Johnny, don't write checks you can't cash. I'm not going to feel bad. Generally, I would never let
Alex
you
has to make the reservation, but I'll pay for it.
Generally, I would never let you pick up a check. But
no, I actually want to bet that. I'm
getting appetizers and I'm getting martinis. I'm ordering up.
Okay.
I'm talking multiple appetizers. We're getting some sashimi, some crispy rice. I'm going in for
maybe two free dishes sent us though.
At least 2 or 3 martinis. I'm going all in if you're buying, and I'm not going to feel guilty when the check comes and it's $500-600.
I want a virtual handshake.
All right, deal. All right, the deal's set.
All right, so you guys all heard it here first. You witnessed it.
We'll invite Jeremiah to dinner too. But you've got to pay for his airfare.
I'm not paying for the flight. Jeremiah, if you want to fly here and come to dinner, you're invited. So, I don't know if dinner's happening if the Flyers don't make the playoffs. I don't know if there's a rebuttal to the bet if they don't make it.
If they don't, then I'm going to buy dinner. Isn't that just kind of
cool? I didn't know if that was a given.
Yeah, that's a given.
I didn't know if you were a stand-up guy like that, but
that's a given.
Great show today. So fun having Frank on. Like I said before, there's 11 games on tonight, so we'll have a lot to talk about tomorrow. I don't know if we'll have a guest. We might just do it, just you and I, and maybe take some questions from the chat. But we want to thank everyone for tuning in, and we'll keep monitoring this CHL college hockey debate and what's going on with all that. But thanks to everyone for tuning in. Thanks to Frank. Thanks to our producer Vic. Any final thoughts, Colby, before we wrap it up? Jeremiah said he's going to come to New York City for sure.
All right, Jeremiah's in. Done. 3-person reservation. Maybe we'll invite someone else and really get that bill juiced for you. Maybe we'll have Vic. We'll get Vic down. He loves New York. Our producer, big New York guy. So we'll see if his passport's expired or not, like Johnny's. But we'll get him in.
Actually, I have that reminder literally on my phone. Renew passport today.
Don't wait.
Yep. And now it's snowing. But all right, thanks everybody. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Have a great day.
What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you need to be hitting the subscribe button right here at Daily Faceoff. Exclusive interviews and analysis from our hockey insider Frank Seravalli, fantasy updates from Brock Sagan, and a daily live show at noon Eastern Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss any of the fantastic content, so hit that subscribe button.